Judge.
I did for no purpose. He said, no, that's no problem. He said, that's what I had down first anyway.
Okay, if y'all are ready, we'll go ahead and get started. Identification.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to wake up on this beautiful winter morning to that glorious sunshine. And we thank you for the opportunity to serve this community. We pray for your wisdom and your guidance on the decisions that we make. And we pray for our first responders that you provide safety and cover them with a hedge of protection. For all those suffering right now at this time with losses due to COVID and other things, we pray that you give them comfort and peace and be with us all during this time. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anybody have any changes to the agenda? I do want to discuss one quick thing under unfinished business. I don't think we have to add it to the agenda though. So I'll make a motion the agenda be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This brings us to the part of citizens wishing to speak. And before we quite do that, there's just a couple of comments that I want to make. First, you would need to come to the podium, and when you do, be sure to state your name. Because when Edwina's going back to make the minutes of this meeting, she may not recognize your voice on the tape. This will allow her to be able to identify people. The other thing is, when you're at the podium and you're 6 feet away from everybody, if you feel comfortable, people will be able to understand what you're saying better if you pull your mask down while you speak. I don't necessarily advocate that because it's not a politically correct thing to do, but people will be able to understand you better. We have one fairly controversial item on the topic today, and that's the land use changes, proposed land use changes. I just want to make a couple of comments because people are all over the wall on this thing. First of all, the primary intent of this is that as Gilmer grows, and growth is coming, there's no way we can stop the growth. As Gilmer grows, and I don't know that we want to stop it, but we do want to control it. What we do want is to make sure that Gilmer County continues to be the rural, agricultural-based county that we all either grew up in or came here for. We don't want, we're growing at a very rapid pace right now. We don't want that to result in an absolute change of the nature of this county. At least I don't, and the folks that I've talked to for the most part don't want that either. There has been some confusion. A lot of people are under the impression that the changes we're proposing are there to initiate growth and to bring in more growth so that we can have more money. That is not the case. It's the very opposite. We're not necessarily trying to stop growth. We just want to see that as we grow, we continue to be a rural agricultural-based county. Now, there's some other things in there that have nothing to do with that particular issue, but that seems to be the one that everybody has the most concern and is the most confused about. So I do want to state up front that the objective here is to see that the growth in Gilmer County does not increase the density here in the county to the extent that we're no longer rural and agricultural. With that said, the floor is open for anybody that would like to comment on any subject.
I'm Kevin Farley, and there's two things. One is the tiny home issue. I don't understand why the county wants to dictate the size of homes people want to live in. And because what you look at is you got so much infrastructure to take a piece of rural land, put a driveway on it, sink a well, you know, all the electric even, you got to pay to have the electric run to your house. Anywhere from the white lines aren't even free. So there's so much infrastructure that the tiny home issue is actually a lifestyle, whereas they live in a small, either they're commuting or they own multiple properties, and it's so the idea of like that people need to be told what size home they can live in is ludicrous to me. And the other thing is like your Warren Buffett types, you know, your big mobile homes, okay, which are okay, rot, and then you need semis to move them. A tiny home generally could be snatched with just about a buddy's pickup truck, taken off the property, and then it's restored to, you know, its original state. So, you know, that's just on that issue. And I can't stand government thinking I got to tell people what to do. We moved here to get away from rules. I bought the property, they installed rules, and then started telling me what I could build, how far it had to be, made me put a shed like 20 feet off the driveway, because it's, I don't know why, because the size of the building had to be 20 foot off the driveway. But then you got to start excavating land, because nothing's flat here. So to make all these rules to stop, have to stop of the growth, because you can't build on a cliff. So, you know, that, I kind of get rambling now. And then, so as far as that goes, those tiny homes, oh, the acreage thing, I don't get it. So what about all the plots that are smaller than 3? If that's okay, what happens to those?
Well, it's my understanding that anything smaller than 3 right now would be grandfathered. They would correct me on this.
Well, right, they have to, because you'd be sued off the
But
plan.
sure, I mean, you know, we're not going to say yesterday you had a lot big enough to build on, today you don't. So
Right.
they would be grandfathered.
Right, and the other thing is, I think you missed the boat on the tiny home thing, last comment, is meth heads don't build tiny homes, okay? It takes money, it takes infrastructure. So it's a lifestyle. To stop people's lifestyle, you talk about rural and freedom, and then you want to make all these rules and stop people. It's like, hey, let's worry about, let's go down and look at like my neighbor's house. He puts crap in his yard. He literally brings junk home, stacks in his yard, so no one will build a house next to him. I own that property. Okay, it's taken me 3 years to try to sell it, but I'm not going to give it away because I want my neighborhood to be elevated. But if that guy, I don't care if he wants a stack of junk cars in his yard, as long as he's not environmentally like draining oil or toxic waste, what do I care? You know, we need to stay, if we want to stay rural, we need to stay free and make less laws. That's what I believe, so thank you.
My name's Alan Patterson. I think it's right to try and control the growth, try and watch how it goes. I don't think anybody wants to wake up and be like Hackworth in 6 months from now. And I think that maybe that's kind of the point of what y'all are trying to do. So I've got nothing wrong with that. I think it's, you know, it's just something that has to happen. I guess it's a matter of trying to do it the way that everybody's sort of happy with it. My main reason for being here is so I went to the zoning meeting in November, December regarding the lady that's wanting to purchase 36 acres roughly next door to me and put a campground in. I don't know whatever came to that. I don't know if y'all have already voted on that and gave it to them, how.
It was voted on for agricultural.
Right.
The contract for the campground was wrong.
Oh, good. All right, so moving on with that, to prevent maybe trying to control it a little bit, because I don't know many people in here. I know this man wants everybody to be free to do what they want to do. I know a whole lot of folks that have built their house or building a house and want to wake up and overlook the campground. I go camping, I've got a camper, love to go camping. I don't want to overlook one. some of the campgrounds I've stayed at, I'm pretty sure those folks wound up with one next door to them, no one overlooked that one. So I wonder, but what I wonder about, why is it considered agriculture recreation? If it's a business, to me, it's like a hotel. They're renting a room, you're renting a spot to park your camper. So the sign that's put up, when you rezone that, all it says is agriculture. Rezone from back to agriculture. So everybody driving by sees this, they say, oh, now they just want to make a farm out of it. Nobody I talked to knew anything about the campground going on. They weren't real happy about it. I believe I was told there was a bunch of those notices that were sent back undeliverable. Man right across the street from me looked at it. When I showed him his name in there, he said, I haven't lived there in 5 years. My tax notice gets to my house when they want the money, but I never got this saying anything about a campground going in and come down there for a reason. So I think maybe, maybe they need to advertise what somebody's wanting to do if it's going to be agriculture or something other than a farm, so that the community knows about it. Because nobody that I talk to that runs out and out Big Creek Road knew anything about a campground being thrown out there. They just thought it was just cows. Great. So I don't understand that, why that's not a commercial. They're a business. They're charging for what they do, just like pretty much anybody else does business.
Well, in the proposal that we'll be discussing today, campgrounds will have their own zoning.
But it's still agriculture. Agriculture
They are,
recreation.
So,
Agriculture recreation.
yeah, but agriculture recreation, when you see that, think campgrounds. I mean, that's what it is.
If everybody in the county knows that, and the sign needs to be big enough when they're running 80 miles an hour up Big Creek Road, but they see that, and they can read it and see it, so they stop in the field. I understand what you're saying, and I think it needs its own zoning. Other question is, does the county have any kind of a plan for the county, and like certain areas to stay residential, certain areas to stay kind of commercial, or kind of condense that or spread it out a little bit?
Well, there is a county plan, but it doesn't ensure that certain areas are residential, certain areas are commercial. I think primarily what you're looking at there is the zoning, when the zoning first came in, and each plot was given a zone. That sort of set the tone for what goes where. Now, that can be changed. As you've seen, all you have to do is request a zoning change. It's not automatic, but it can happen.
But are there certain areas that we're gonna try to keep businesses from blowing up in, such as this? I know a lot of these folks out here are builders and they're wanting to develop land and have 50 houses built out there, and then somebody throws the campground up right there next to them. I don't know, like that lady was saying that night, I don't know that it's gonna increase their value of their land for their $500,000 houses, or if there's all of a sudden there's a campground out there. So I hope they put a lot of thought into how you're gonna control the campground, because I know that's a big thing for them, and they're coming, even though that lady said the same as what's going to buy in Walmart, or we're gonna be a high-end campground. Tell the campground.
I can give you my personal thoughts on what I would like to see for the county. I believe that the business district of the county, or business area, primarily is within the cities and 515. To me, and again, this is just speaking my opinion here. Once you get out into the rural areas of the county, I think they should stay rural areas of the county. Now, that doesn't mean that if there's a large plot of land somewhere, that the zoning could not be changed to put a campground there. It's not automatic. There's nowhere anybody can just go put a campground today because they decided to do it. It would have to be looked at, reviewed, and approved.
Doesn't having it being commercial versus agriculture also steer a lot of that?
Well, there's a lot of businesses that can be conducted with an agricultural zone.
That's why we come up with a new zoning for campgrounds, and
For the
if it's
campgrounds.
commercial, don't they have to throw out their whole plan at
If
one
it's something
time?
that currently
Get
is,
it approved for what it's gonna be
If it's
versus
something-
agriculture, they just have it zoned agricultural recreation, and they later on will steer into.
if they have it zoned agricultural recreation, and later on, yeah, they can put a campground in.
They
But
don't have to throw the
that's
plan.
that's why it's not automatic. They would have to come, first of all, to the planning and zoning board, and ideally get approval there, and then it would come to us for final approval. That's when all the neighbors get to say, you know, we don't want to look at this, and it's our job to make sure that we do the best we can to keep everybody happy. And that's why, I believe, what is it, 300 foot, in the proposed AR, there is a 300 foot buffer. And part of the point of that is to get this away from whatever might be the nearest property owners. Also, from my own perspective, I would want this to be something, a piece of property that not only is sufficient size. I know we kind of bounce between 25 and 35 acres. Where are we?
As drafted is 25.
25 acres. I personally would not want that to be 25 acres in the middle of an R1 spot, you know, and I don't think anybody else would.
That's kind of
But
what
if there's enough non-residential land around it, they've got full 25 acres, they've got 300-foot buffers, then yeah, there could be a campground there. But the point is, nobody can just say, I'm going to buy this 25 acres for the campground there. There's approvals that you have to go through, and there's this sort of a process where people can have their say about it. I would like to mention too, and you brought up some really good points about not wanting to wake up in the morning and see this, and property values. And this kind of goes back to what the gentleman was saying before about being able to tell people what to put where. Before zoning came in, and when I came to Gilmer County, we didn't have zoning. Anybody could do just that, anything you wanted to do, wherever you wanted to do it. The point of zoning was to allow people to locate an area. If you wanted to put a house somewhere where there's just only going to be other houses, and you don't want to be around farms and so forth, then you know you find yourself in R1 area, and you get protected for that. The point of it is to protect property values, to protect people from, for instance, having your neighbor put a sawmill next door, that sort of thing. It's all about protecting. Now, you cannot protect without telling some people they can't do what they want to do. And so it's a balance. But to your point with the campgrounds, with the RV parks, what we came up with is you cannot, we can't say we're banning RV parks in Gilmer County.
And I like
So what we have
what
to
I
do
read
is
in the paper, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I just don't understand the agriculture versus commercial, they're a business.
If we make it
They're
commercial,
charging. If you make it commercial like recreation, then they would have to get approval for everything
they
right up
would, but
front.
let me tell you the downside to that. If somebody wants a trailer park, no, not a trailer park, an RV park, I'm sorry. If somebody wants an RV park, and our requirement was that it had to be zoned commercial. So they put in a request to zone commercial because they wanted to put an RV park there, and they get that. Then they decide, you know what, I really don't want an RV park. What else can I do with commercial? And they look down through there. They're automatically able to do anything else in commercial at that point, right where that 25-acre RV park would have been. That could become, what's a good example of a commercial zoning? People might know, I don't know, factory.
Yeah, my backup.
Yeah, I mean, once they get that C1, they can put anything there they want. They can say, I've changed my mind about the RV park, and now I've got this whole list of things I can put there, and y'all have already approved it because you made me commercial. With doing it this way, even if they get the agricultural zoning as it is currently, they still can't put an RV park there. They have to come, that's conditional. They still have to come and say, okay, well, I'm agricultural, but now I'd like to put the RV park here. They have to get a separate group for that. With the proposal for its own zone, they can get them both approved together, but they still can't turn around and say, okay, well, I changed my mind about the RV park. Now I'm going to put in this big commercial warehouse or whatever it is they want to put there. So we didn't feel that we could make it require them to be commercial because the risk was too great that you could end up with something way worse than an RV park there. And since they already had the commercial zoning, there's no other permission they need. That makes sense?
Yeah, sort of. It just, I guess on the, there, get back to kind of the community knowing what that sign means when they see rezoning. They see agriculture, most people think of agriculture, farming, cows, something along those lines, not an RV park. Commercial gets thrown up there, they get to thinking more about what's this gonna be. I would have never thought you could put a campground up on our agricultural piece of land anyway before all this came about. It seemed like it's a business. They're charging for what their services are, just like a hotel. Seemed like they'd have to be commercial. Get the tax base off of them, power bills higher like mine is, their home bills higher like mine is, and pay all the commercial taxes. Because I do the same thing. I got a commercial piece of property, I make money at home. Same kind of thing, but I can't have mine agriculture. Hard to figure. That was not more, I won't take it any more time. I appreciate you looking into it, and I do agree with that, some sort of special zoning for a campground. Because I don't think most folks would want one just to appear where somebody's trying to build a nice big neighborhood of some sort in place.
And just to add to that, that's why we did that agricultural recreation, because we didn't have a place to list the recreation. It's not just RV camping, but it's other recreational things that could come about. So, but anyway, so that's, yeah, I understand your misunderstanding. We just didn't have another zone to put it in, but we will now. Also to let you know, there are a lot of businesses throughout the county that do get to run their business under agriculture. Our wineries and different things, so there are. Right, and they mostly are, right.
It still roots back to kind of a farming type of thing that most people associate with agriculture.
And also to let you and anyone know that any time anyone wants to go to planning and zoning to see the maps that are mapped out of the zoning areas throughout the county, that's always open to them to see that in planning and zoning, where the areas of the county are already zoned. So to know, if you're looking for an area, then, which is the commercial areas that we're kind of keeping in this commercial area that Charlie spoke of. But anyway, so I wanted to let you know that as well.
All right, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Crystal Chastain, and I've read over the list of proposed changes for the land use, and I really think y'all need to step back and take a really harder look at that. I think y'all are limiting affordable housing for our workforce here in the community. I really think that a teacher or EMT or policeman can't afford to build a $500,000 house or buy one, and you're pushing them away and out of our community by making all these changes. You're driving the price of real estate really, really high. So I suggest that you step back, table this, take a really, really hard look at it, because we do need some growth, we do need to control it, but we don't need to limit out and segregate these people that don't make $500,000 a year. So that was just my suggestion, that we just take a harder look at that, because we do need our workforce here. All right, so thank you.
And I'll comment on that, Chris, because that is a definite thing on my mind, is being able to have those affordable housing. I've worked with Kent and many people in the community on trying to do that. We've also talked and worked for months with our builders to try to build affordable housing as well. So I'm kind of torn to the fact that if adding another half acre makes that house that unaffordable, because I think you could still build something smaller and affordable on it. I get your point, I totally, and it's a balance. We're just trying to figure out how to control the masses that want to be here. But I think there's a way for still our builders to build. Unfortunately, the demand, as you know, is so hot right now that people are buying the bigger, more expensive houses. And when a builder can make more money on that house, why would they build a smaller house? So there needs to, there's some.
There's a fine balance. And I know some builders, they do want to build $800,000 houses, and that's fine. I will sell them all day long too. But I also know there is a huge shortage in the $250,000, $300,000 homes that a regular working person can afford.
Totally
And that's
agree.
sad in our community.
I totally agree.
Because we don't want to drive our teachers away, or our policemen, or EMTs to other communities where they can afford to live.
And we're working on it. So, it's in
Yeah,
our minds.
I think it has to have I don't have a solution. I think it has to take a lot of time and look at. We shouldn't jump into anything.
That's good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Bill Frady. I'm a local builder here, but I'm here for probably a different reason. I'm going to expound somewhat on what Crystal said. I think that we are creating unintentional ramifications here. We are creating a class division with these proposals. When you eliminate the manufacturer, inventory prices rise. And as inventory prices rise, it makes affordable housing even harder. We talk a lot, try to work a lot on workforce housing, but can anyone explain to me how any of this is helping workforce housing? Adding a half acre here or a half acre there, as you said, that really, well, it does if you put in these places which will eliminate developers. I'm not here to talk about them. Will eliminate developers, which makes inventory prices rise, regardless whether it's half acre or. But you take Mr. Taxpayer there that's been working his whole life, paying his taxes like the county said. He's got 4 acres. He's got a little house. Maybe his daughter, granddaughter would like to build a house. He could give her half of his property, but not under these proposals. We need to think about that. I think we are hurting the taxpayer that owns a small amount of acreage. People with a lot of money, this won't hurt them. And this won't stop growth. As you know, there's no way to stop growth. It will just make a class division. I think Crystal said a lot of what I was going to say. Second and lastly, I would like this board to at least consider tabling this until this pandemic is over. I think this room would have been a lot more full, but I know a lot of people that called me this week and said that they're not coming because of the pandemic. They're still afraid to be out in crowds. I'd like to ask y'all to table this until this is over.
Thank you, Hubert.
DeVille, I want to let you know also, I know not everyone is on Facebook, but we are recording it and it's on the county website to include the public because we know that it's difficult to be here during the pandemic.
Sure.
There may be some confusion as to what was printed in the press and the actual ordinance that's been presented to y'all. I know that the bill used the example of 4 acres and the gentleman will not be able to subsequently subdivide, but remember y'all, what is before y'all has a 2-acre minimum and not has been published as a 3-acre minimum. And the agricultural actually has a 5-acre minimum, not a 7-acre minimum that has been published. So there may be some confusion as to the acreage.
Now, that's because of changes made from what we originally proposed.
That's correct.
We cannot hear you.
David, would you sort of summarize that for
I don't know if
everybody?
this speaker's working. And I don't have the text of what was printed in the Times Courier or perhaps Fetcher News, but I do have an email that Karen had shared with Charlie, and it summarizes the proposed changes. And some of those summaries or some of those changes, for instance, the residential R1 low density was proposed to go from 1.5 acres to 3 acres. Instead, the text of the draft that is before the Board of Commissioners for consideration and debate and discussion today, actually that acres minimum is 2 acres. It's not actually 3 acres. And I think that would have been, in your example that you used as an illustration, you'd use 4 acres as the total, and the gentleman have not been able to subsequently subdivide. Do want to make certain that everyone knows that the context in which they are looking at is a 2 acre minimum on an R1 and a 1.25 acre on an R2 and a 5 acre minimum on an A1 and a 25 acre minimum on an AR1. So just so that there's no confusion with respect to the acreage amounts, that's what's before the board today for discussion.
Well, let me say though,
I guess my point to that is, let's go back to say the landowner, the taxpayer is going to pay taxes on this property, and on his property for 30 years in this county, that's 3 acres. According to the state health organization, we can have 1.5 acres without wells, or with a well in the same tank. Why would we get away from that?
let me say though that what the Times Courier printed, they received directly from us. So they printed what we told them. It's just that this has been a changing, constantly changing environment. So.
Well, I think too, the public possibly got misled, not intentionally by the Times Courier. I'm sure the Times Courier printed information they were given, but I was at the Planning and Zoning Board, and the Planning and Zoning Board was wholeheartedly, in my opinion, against the majority of this, and that was not exactly what was in the paper. Next to that, say for an agricultural community, we're trying to stay an agricultural community, we have a 3 acre minimum for agriculture, we're trying to move that to 7 acres. That's not really pro-agriculture.
The Fetcher News article got a lot of people very upset. When I read that, what I came away with was that if you were at the meeting and you knew what went on, this article would have made perfect sense to you and it wouldn't have been confusing. If you weren't there, you could come away with a different take on it. I want to thank Lonnie because when I pointed that out to him, he came back with a second clarifying, and hopefully people were able to see that as well. So I do appreciate that. Yes, sir.
My name's James Waters. I'm a builder here, home builder. Well, I just like to say back in 2006, the county government at that time kind of did the same thing with zoning and ordinance. And then about 2008 or 9, the economy crashed. So we spent the next 10 years not doing anything. If you're in Gilmer County, the buildings come back for the past 5 years probably. And here we are back at the same point, trying to restrict things again. Just, I think that y'all really do need to take a look at that. The economy itself has a way of spreading things out. And about the price of housing, the material prices that we have to buy drives the cost of housing, and the price of the lots that we have to buy to build housing. So if we have to buy a 3 acre lot, it's going to be double the cost of what the 1.5 acre lot is. Back in '06, people were telling the school system, the growth is coming, we better get ready for it, so they go out and buy land. It never came. It stopped shortly after the zoning was done. So the economy has a way of correcting things. If it gets too high, it will crash and come back down. So I think we need to not try to keep putting a lot of restrictions on what we do. What we have has worked good for many years. I don't really see the point of change.
Thank you.
How's everybody today?
Good. You?
Good. My name is Keith Sumner.
I'm a builder here in Gilmer County. Do a little bit of development, but been building several years here. And I'm kind of going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I'm the guy Crystal was talking about. As we make these changes, I could see a definite financial benefit to my business model. Hands down, no doubt. It'd be very lucrative for me. However, I'm not so sure that I believe that's the best for the county. I'm one guy, and it's not, you know, I feel like I'm the guy that should come up here and say, I think we need to really consider, just as DeVale said, what we're doing to these local people. And, you know, for my years of building and buying land and selling, I just can't believe that these changes are going to be good for the local people. And it just, it feels like another layer of government. It feels like another set of rules that's going to surpass what the state guidelines are. The state lays out for us, you know, a very strict guideline for where a septic tank can go, where a well can go. So we're trying to supersede what the state's requirements are, which just don't feel good. It just isn't right. When we're changing rules to change rules, I'm not sure that we know what we're going to do. This may be the greatest thing in the world. I don't know, but it just doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like that's the right thing for this community at this time. So I guess my question, I mean, have you guys done any studies of any other cities or counties in Georgia that's done these kind of changes? And if so, who are they? And what kind of negative effects have that had on their county? Because, you know, I just can't see us moving into these kind of major changes with this county without a heck of a lot of study. And it just, if we just make changes to make changes, that's almost reckless. And as things change, and as we diminish property values, or we hurt some of the folks that have been here for a long time, and we hurt their ability maybe to sell their properties, you know, blood's on your hands. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I do not have the answer. But the one thing I will say is it's your responsibility to have these answers. It's your responsibility to have studied other communities that have made these changes. And if you've done that, I think that should be in the newspaper. I think that should be put out there. And this you made a comment a minute ago about, well, we made a change since we had written something in the paper. Well, that tells me we're just kind of throwing stuff up against the wall and hoping something will stick.
Well, let me say to that you're not far off at this point.
Okay.
We're not here to make the change today. We
Let's
voted on
pass.
it today. The only thing that, if anything was voted on today, the only thing that we vote on would be to advertise to people that here's what we're thinking about doing, here's what we're planning to do. And before you can advertise, here's what we're planning to do, you have to come up with what you're planning to do. And generally, in that process of coming up with what you plan to do and what you want to advertise, there's a lot of changes that are made.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, somewhere along the way, somebody got this idea to do this. Now, is this something that's just in somebody's mind, or is this something that's been proven?
Well,
Because it is you guys' responsibility, when you make a change like this, to make the change for the better. And I'm not saying this is not for the better. My whole argument is show the community why this is going to be better before you make these changes. And this may be the best thing in the whole world. I don't know that I believe that. I do believe if you make these changes, it would be the betterment for Keith Sumner. I really believe that. But this is not about me. This is about my community. And this is about the people that are here. And this is, you know, I know most folks, they come up here, they're self-centered, they're only interested in their own well-being. That's not why I'm standing here.
I'm standing here because I just don't feel like this is the best thing for our community. I don't know, that don't make me right because I feel that way. But when you guys make certain decisions like this, there needs to be some studying going on. There needs to be another community that you can say, this is the true model. Because I don't care what business you're in. I don't care what kind of athlete you are. I don't care what kind of business person you are. I don't know what kind of county you run. Somebody's better than you. Doesn't really matter what you do. There's somebody better. And if we're not looking to copy or model somebody better or a community that's better, you know, if we don't have that, then you're right. We're just throwing stuff up against the wall. So, and for us guys sitting out here, I mean, that's not fair. That's not fair to these guys working, and it's not fair to the community. So I ask of you, please understand what you're doing and take your time and just do the right thing. Look up. Good Lord will give you the right answer. I just hope it's the right answer for the masses and not for Keith Sumner, but for the masses of this county. And that's it.
One thing that I do want to address, because almost everyone that has spoken so far has mentioned it, that we're not listening to the local people, or we're not taking into consideration the local people, the community. Let me say that this is not something that came about because we just decided we wanted to make some changes. From where I'm sitting now, this is something that does very much affect the local community and the local folks here. And I have probably heard more about this in the last month or so than probably anything else that's come along since I've been in this seat. I am basically inundated with calls and emails from local folks saying, you've got to do something, we don't want this to become, and typically what I hear is Cobb County or Ackworth or Cherokee, you know, pick one. But I have received just what I would call massive input from the local folks, and they're not saying increase lot sizes. They're just saying make sure that we stay rural. We don't want to become like the big counties. Others say rural and agricultural. So basically, anything that I do in this regard, from my perspective, is I'm just responding to the input that I'm getting from the local community, saying that we want to make sure that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we're not living in Cobb County. I don't have a solution to that, short of increasing lot sizes. I don't know how you control or decrease density as you grow. And growth is coming, we all know that. One kind of scary statistic, I guess, for me was, you know, we've had a lot of conversation recently too about elections and election boards and that sort of thing. And I'm not going to try to give a figure right down to the person, and I'm going to approximate a tad, but the election folks tell me that in the 2016 presidential election, Gilmer County had a little bit in excess of 12,000 registered voters. In the 2020 presidential contest election, Gilmer had about 23,000 registered voters. Now that's 4 years and 11,000, well, double. That's double the number of registered voters in 4 years. This is not 11,000 people that were sitting out there unregistered and finally decided, I think I need to register and vote. This is growth coming from the 18 and above segment. We don't really have a way of measuring below that because this is just registered voters. I think that rung a bell with a lot of people and made them very concerned, and of course, a natural thing to do is to call the commissioners and say, you know, essentially, what you said, y'all are supposed to have the answers to do something. This is the beginning of that process of us trying to come up with the answers. And it is only just the very beginning. So, I agree with everything pretty much that's been said today, other than the fact that we haven't listened to the local folks, because for me, that's what's driving all this, is the comments and the emails, and phone calls and so forth that I'm getting from local folks. So having said that, we're reopened for more comments.
I'd like to tap into what you said too, Charlie, that, and you, Mr. Sumner, I would love to have conversations with you as we did back, I don't know, whenever we did that for the affordable housing, to really figure out how we can do that. I know costs of wood and all are going up, but I still believe there's got to be a way to work on building some houses. I get that nobody wants to do that because you can do this and make more money. You know, the bigger houses on bigger lots. For us, I want to let everyone know also, this is not just something that we came up with all of a sudden. We've been looking at the Planning and Zoning, Planning Commission, I believe, yes, has been looking at this for several months. We've been in sat-in meetings, I have, for the last couple of months, back into November. So this isn't just something that we just popped up with today and decided, let's change this. That's why you see the numbers change, because this is a conversation that we're having amongst ourselves, the Planning Commission, the community, and hoping to have just this conversation to continue to go so we know which way to go. We have right now, before our moratorium, which I'm sure you, the builders, I'm assuming y'all are all builders back there, but I probably shouldn't, but the moratorium, you're kind of packed together, sorry, I figured. But the moratorium that's going on, we have 4,000 acres already planned before that moratorium took place of building, of new homes. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we have the infrastructure that can support that. And if you haven't been to any of our meetings, then you may not be aware that we don't have a lot of money for roads and bridges right now. We don't have a lot of extra money. We're doing the best we can, and we're doing much better than we did before. But it's a whole balancing act of a lot of different things. So for your question too, Keith, are we looking at other counties? I've been having conversations with a gentleman, a former commissioner from Cherokee County, and I'm kind of learning what they did wrong and looking at their zoning as what they did wrong to maybe what we can do better. So I am looking outside at other counties of what they're doing. I don't know, I don't know what our other commissioners are doing, but I do not take this lightly at all. I love this community. I also look at it as an environmental issue. We have a beautiful gift here in Gilmer County. Our mountains, our rivers, our streams, and if we don't protect that and not let the masses, and some of you are maybe not all of you know that I come from Atlanta and I moved here 25 years ago to get away from that. And I don't want to be Cherokee County and Gilmer County. And we do want to stay agricultural and a rural community as best we can. Growth is coming, we can't stop it. But if we can sort of balance it the best way we know how, and keeping in mind that affordable housing, it is not off of any of our minds. So that's it.
Back to your comment about voters, and I think this election is not going to be held. I mean, I think everybody's super incentivized to get out and vote. So I don't know, technically, I'm interested in seeing the census. That is interesting. Yeah. But in 2006, as Gene Porter said, we were told that by 2011, Gilmer County would be 44,000 people. I don't believe that's here yet. This is somewhere 15 years later. That being said, my point here today is we are hurting the taxpayer with these proposals. You can't stop growth. bigger, then that means the $86,000 and $800,000 houses will dominate, and that's cutting out the lower class. I think we need to step back and look at how we can make it easier for the average taxpayer to not be hurt in this neighborhood, so that he can still divide his property. He can still sell off part of it. The children can still sell off part of it so that they take care of him at the nursing home after he's paid taxes in this county all his life. I think that we are hurting that, and we are hurting, it is almost like this proposal is, like I said, a class division. We are either going to be living in cardboard shacks or in $800,000 houses. There doesn't seem to be any middle of the ground here, so who are we really protecting? When you say that Mr. Smith will no longer sell his farm at 80 years old because no other can touch it because it's on a county road that has 40-foot right-of-way, that's pretty hard on him. I think with those are the people that you're talking about, the local people that's been for their whole life. I think that needs to be considered harder than what we're doing. I know you're trying to slow growth. I'm local. You said you talked to local folks the other day. I've never been anywhere else. I've never lived in another county in my life. I had to leave here to get a job at times. But that being said, I'm local too. I think we're hurting the local people with something.
Okay, thank you.
My name's David Bowman. I'm not gonna be as nice as these folks right here. I'm gonna tell you right now, can y'all, any of y'all, live on a third or half of what you normally make right now? Can you?
Well,
No, answer the question.
it's probably not a good question to ask no retired guy, because
Well,
I'm used to
so
it.
you're making money right here doing what you're
I
doing. You get paid
understand.
to do
I
that.
understand, but I was retired before I do this. I will be retired after. What I'm saying is I took care of my retirement at the time I retired. So yeah,
All right.
the answer to your question is yes, for me.
Well, here's the thing. I got 2 kids to put through college. I'm a single dad. And you're cutting money. Anytime you add what you're doing, you're cutting money out of my pocket. Everybody out here that builds in the construction industry, realty, when you take and you have to, whether it's 2 acres or 3 acres, whatever y'all got in mind, you know, you publish one thing and you sit here like a typical lawyer, you say something else.
Okay, here's the thing. Whoa, wait a minute, Dave.
Y'all adopted those acreage requirements in the community.
I told you I wasn't
I
going to be as nice as
understand.
these
You don't have to
folks.
be nice, but you do have to be respectful.
I fought for this country, you understand?
We're only asking you to
I'm
be
for this
respectful.
place. And you're sitting here telling me I can't, you're going to tell me exactly what I can do with my
I don't
land?
care what, no, go ahead. All I'm saying is be respectful. Don't get up here and start talking about you're being a bunch of lawyers, this, that, the other. Tell us what you want to say. Say it
I
plainly,
said I wasn't
but
going
be
to be
respectful.
nice about it as these folks. But anybody, when you take, whether it's, if you got an acre and a half right now, and you add a half, and you have to be 2 acres to do something, it tacks on money to every single thing down through here. I mean, it's like a domino effect. Whether it's an acre and a half going to 2 or an acre and a half going to 3. You think about the construction industry at starting, for example, with myself or Lamar or anybody else that grades for the builders. You go out there and you grade this thing, well, you know, when you take this and you're having to add more, well, it eventually takes away from my work, is what it boils down to. You're taking away from planning and zoning, because the inspectors are supposed to come out there. When you cut back, and y'all said it out here before, or already this morning, you're not going to stop growth. You're not.
I agree.
Here's the thing, leave it as is. Things are messed up enough as it is. Leave it as is, fix what you got. And I'm very passionate about what I do. And I'm in the process of buying more land to add to my house so I can give something to my kids. Or excuse me, buying more land to add to the land I've got so I can give something to my kids. Or if I want to build a rental house on it, I can. But if this stuff goes through, it cuts me back on what I can do. I apologize to you folks if y'all are all lawyers, any of us, but I'm gonna tell you this all. If you're in politics, I'm gonna keep that comment to myself. Y'all, I'm sorry I get so wound up.
Ask something about what she had mentioned, about the roads and all. And I voted against the 1% thing here a while back. But I know our roads need a lot of work, and I know we need that amount of work. Is there anybody looked into like impact fees for when somebody builds a second home, not necessarily their primary residence, if they live here and they're gonna stay here? Maybe the folks out of Florida that are building a $500,000 house that are just gonna come up here every month or two and buy all their goods and everything somewhere else, and they just blow in for a weekend, but in the meantime, the roads are getting.
I can promise you, I'm confident, that if we were to propose impact fees, we'd have another room just like this with people just as upset as you are, or y'all are. There is, I'm gonna say that from my perspective, there's no win here.
You can't make everybody happy.
if
I
we-
know that. I'm just wondering if anything else has been looked into, other than that one time they was talking about adding the 1% sales tax.
We have not looked
Since I
into
live here,
impact
we
fees.
try to buy all we can here. I wasn't really impressed on paying 8% on mine, if there was another way the money could be got.
And I understand that, and that was us trying to react to just a groundswell, and we want our roads fixed, and we want them fixed now. We looked into that a lot, quite a bit. We figured out that we could fix them in 6 years, or we could fix them in 25 years. It depended on, and the difference being a T-splosh or not a T-splosh. I'm perfectly fine with 25 years, you know, and I heard this from a lot of people. I live on a paved road, why would I vote for this? I live on a paved road. It's a private road, taken care of by the HOA, you know, doesn't help me any of this personally, if this gets approved. But it was an option for the county, and I always said when this was going on, I didn't care if it passed one way or the other, it's what the county wants. It's whether you want them fixed in 6 years or 25 years. And, you know, I'm perfectly fine either way. My frustration is that when we try to do something like this, because we're inundated by people saying, do something, do something, do something. And we try to do something, well, we'll get a room full like this that are totally opposed to everything that you've heard so far, even though what you've heard so far is just essentially us, for lack of a better term, throwing stuff up against the wall. If we take a completely opposite course, we're going to have a room full just like this with people just as upset because we're doing something else. If we decide to leave it exactly the way it is, we can get another room full of people just as upset about that. So from my perspective, there is no win. There's just do what you feel like is best for the community.
Any other way to look into getting money to make roads?
Oh, I can assure you, we've looked at that, yes, sir. But, and we've asked people, you know, what's your suggestion? Well, I suggest you take it away from public safety. Well, they don't say public safety, they say take it away from other departments. And we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars required for roads. Those things are wickedly expensive. It's going, for instance, it's going to cost us probably $1 million to repave Boardtown Road, and it needs to be repaved in its entire 11 miles. When you're talking about millions and millions of dollars and in response it's taken from other departments, there's only 2 departments that have a budget big enough to take it from. You can't take millions of dollars away from a $500,000 park and rec budget, or from $300,000, $200,000 library budget.
Well, that's what I
You can only take it.
Thing when somebody was building their second or third vacation.
Well, yeah,
Plus, then
there is the impact fee thing.
When they do
just the impact fee thing, but then we get all these other people just as upset.
I
Plus,
know you can't make everybody happy.
well, plus the state of Georgia has their own regulations for impact fees. You know, if you're gonna do impact fees, then you get into the Department of Community Affairs and all this other stuff too. They just don't seem feasible. Taking them from public safety doesn't seem feasible, because first of all, you'd have to take virtually everything they've got to make a difference. It's just, yeah, we've looked into it, but we don't find a good solution, and we're happy for people to tell us a good solution, you know?
And I think for us to follow up, for me, this was kind of an alternative to impact fees. Most of the counties south of us charge impact fees. So unfortunately, it's probably coming at some point as you come up there to the microphone. But this was sort of an alternative we were trying to come up with that we might be able to avoid them at this moment.
My name is Jim DuPont. Mr. Patterson alluded to the question I was going to be asking. In this latest draft is under adequate road standards. It says, as determined by the county development impact fee ordinance. And I wasn't aware, or I was going to see, you know, if there's something coming down the road to that effect. Because it's worded in here now in this draft.
So, yep.
Jim, it's not, it's just simply put into the draft so that if it's necessary at some point or purpose in the future, that it can be considered. It has to be statutorily in there, it has to be an ordinance of the county, but the board itself does not entertain or even consider it an impact fee at this time.
Well, I was just curious because it wasn't in the previous draft.
Yeah. Yeah, if you'll recall in that previous draft, it said that the builder, the developer could be required to pay the cost and everything, and that wouldn't have been statutorily correct. It can't do that. So if it gets to a situation where that has to be considered, there'll be a subsequent adoption of a subsequent ordinance at some point. But otherwise, statutorily and under the Georgia law, that wouldn't have been permissible to do it that way, because it was, as you were concerned at different times, at points in the conversations, the vagueness of it, the road department determining that aspect, and the applicability to developers equally.
Thank you.
Change orders again. I'd just like to say what you said about the voters going from 12,006 to 23,000. Through the high school, there's about 1,500 kids each year in high school that's done 18 years old. If you divide that by 6 years, it comes up to about 9,000 kids.
And I hope that's what it is.
So the growth from 9,000 bucks, I was thinking added back maybe 3,000. You know, it's not as bad as what it sounds like, but those kids are already here to live. So the biggest portion of it.
And that's good to know. I'm happy to hear that can be the case. Probably it means that I used a bad example, but we do know that people are coming here in great numbers. And that's probably going to continue. I'm fine with leaving everything the way it is. What I want to do is what's best for the community and what the community wants, what the local folks, the people who live here now. I want what they want. Because my job is not to tell them how to think or what they're willing to accept or not, you know. The problem is we got a very diverse population here, and trying to figure out who wants what and who wants it the most and how many is the majority is a difficult thing to do. So it's a quandary. And I don't I'm not opposed to any group. Virtually everything has been said here this morning, I agree with. I just know that there's other opinions that people hold just as strongly. And I understand that it's my job to have the answers. The only thing that I can say about that is having the answers is a process, and this is just the beginning of the process. So if the answers that we're proposing right now aren't proper answers, then we do need to back up, look at them, and say what can be changed, what would be more helpful. And we need y'all's input for that, and I appreciate the things that you said here today. We need input from other groups too that have other opinions, so that we can consider everybody's thoughts on this. It's going to be a rough process, not one I'm looking forward to, but it'll be a long process. We're not trying to rush this thing through. Good morning.
My name's Chris Karleen. I just wanted to, one quick note. The real estate market in Gilmer County especially is always going in cycles. And we're on the high end of the cycle right now. And you saw what happened in 2008, 2009, and who knows, I hope it doesn't happen again, but it could, because right now, obviously, everything's so inflated, the prices are so inflated, and very little of that has anything to do with the lot sizes. It just doesn't. It's just the materials, cost of labor, everything comes into play with those prices, and that balloon is filling up again. And it's going to correct itself. The market will correct itself no matter what we do with the lot sizes here. But I would ask that you would give it a little more time just to see what the market does, because they do correct themselves as we have seen in the past. Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, we'll move on to the remainder of the agenda. I did want to add one thing under unfinished business. In our previous meeting, we discussed the need to change the dates on the November meeting because of the conflict with the holiday. We have since received another conflict from ACCG.
I saw that last night. Well, bright and early the next morning will be for the
Well,
work session.
I'm not the sort of fellow that can leave Savannah at 5 p.m. and drive back to LK and be prepared for a meeting bright and early. Right now, our November meeting is scheduled for the 16th and the 17th, and I would propose that it just be moved a day forward to the 17th and 18th. If that would work for
Okay.
everybody. Or we could not do the 18th.
Yeah, I knew there was a reason that we were not.
What about the 17th and the
Yeah,
Well, yeah, we can do that.
Hubert's got an excellent suggestion.
What time do they meet?
We meet at 5 o'clock.
For how long?
Depends on how many spaces are on.
2, 3, 4 hours.
Yeah, probably anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours.
Okay, so we could have our regular meeting at 9 p.m., 9 a.m. on the 18th. That works for everybody?
That's too long, so it's not good for me.
Not good for you?
No, it is good for me.
Oh, it is good for
Yeah, I was
you.
like, it's not good for somebody that works that's trying to come to the meeting.
Yeah, it's only one occasion, no,
Yeah.
because of the
I'm good with it.
circumstances. Okay, discussion and possible action of a revised land use ordinance. I feel like we've had a pretty good discussion. Do we need to vote on
You
that?
can.
I'll make it a motion just so we can cover it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That way we're covered either way. Anyway, I feel like we have pretty good discussion of the land use ordinance. I will say this, we've had enough of a discussion that my personal feeling is that we table it and look at it some more. That's just me.
Well, I think some more discussion amongst us, of course, the public as well, but, I don't know. I mean,
Oh, no.
are you saying just to move it to next month for us to do our own?
I'm saying let's discuss, as much as we like, but let's not take any official action.
Oh, for sure, I agree. And Hubert, do you have anything to say?
No, we need to table it. I agree. We'll do that this morning.
Yeah, correct.
So if there's any discussion you'd like to have, go ahead.
Well, I think more just some clarification. I thought Ken had asked her. The question, so I don't know actually, do I have, this is more like kind of feeling go out on different sections, but,
Well, I have reservations about the 12-degree.
oh, that's to 16 now.
Yeah, see,
Did you get the latest?
Karen had submitted recommendations from the planning commission that were incorporated into the latest draft, with the exception of the acreage amounts that y'all had discussed at your previous meeting and everything. There are aspects of the ordinance, though, that I can't get any guidance on, and y'all would need to discuss it. I really think it would benefit from a work session, to be perfectly honest with you, at some time in the future. However, we do have a moratorium in place, so if y'all are going to push this too much further out, y'all need to discuss the effects of that moratorium. Because one of the things that I was going to recommend, if in fact y'all did adopt or proceed with adoption changes to the land use ordinance, was to suspend the acreage requirements for a period of a year, because the surveyors are going to be backlogged with everybody trying to get in during that 60-day window, trying to get a 3-acre lot subdivided into 2 1.5-acre lots, and it just simply wouldn't be fair if you were to, it'd be better to suspend that, suspend it for the developers as well, so that anything that they have in the pipeline that hadn't already been submitted to Karen could be further moved along, and then the acreage requirements would come into play a year from now. That would have been my recommendation. But we have a moratorium, so I can't suggest that you continue that moratorium if you're going to put this off too much longer, because that's unfair to the developers that are on standby at this point in time.
When does the moratorium end?
I want to think it's April the 1st, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't see us being able to conclude this. No. By the end of the October. No. Even if we're ready to move on to that. So we'll either have to extend it or we'll have to.
I'd encourage you not to extend the moratorium, because that's just that creates an unfair hardship right now at this point in time for those developers that are just. I mean, Jim's here. Most everybody else has left, but I'm sure Jim's got something in the pipeline that didn't get to Karen in time, and I'm sure that they would like to proceed or know how to proceed at some point in time. If I'm not, am I saying that correctly, Jim?
I agree.
Yeah.
And I don't know, if it seems like the lot size is the big thing, big argument, right?
Well, there's
Good, okay.
Yeah, I think that lot sizes were what would have surfaced, but I think there's more nuts and bolts in this that would affect lots more aspects of it. Jim, you may, the roads is what brought this to light, the classifications of the roads and the manner in which you can construct the road and the surface of the road. And that's really what's driven this to begin with.
That's a problem. I mean, that needs to be attention brought to it for the developments that are coming in, I think.
And it may warrant looking at neighboring communities, neighboring counties to see how they handle their road surfaces. I have been informed by a surveyor that Gilmer's road standards are fairly lax with respect to communities or standards that are applied by adjoining counties. I don't know that. I've never investigated it myself. I've never done that. So that may be, for instance, I've heard Dawson requires a paved surface for every community or every new road development. I don't know. That may be the case. So, but roads is what brought this to y'all's attention, and then it was considered to do other elements. But that moratorium, because spring is the time they put the blades to the ground, and that's when they start cutting the roads in. As soon as the March rains have moved on, I think that's your busy time, isn't it, Jim?
Well,
It definitely improves.
moratorium may expire, but I'm personally not prepared to go forward with this at this point. I think that we table it.
You can always do a work session.
Do we need a second to table?
Yes.
You made a motion, I'll second
All in favor?
it. Aye.
Could we do a, sorry, this might have been, should have been a discussion, but have a work session with the planning board? I mean, so that we can really
Take
discuss.
a joint meeting.
Right.
We can do that, and I would also like to get with the Builders Association and a couple of other associations to see if we can get a good representation of those folks at their work session.
Since y'all have tabled the land use, are y'all going to consider any action with respect to the moratorium? I don't think there's any need to leave it in place with the action that you.
We meet in work session on February the 10th. We decide then about the moratorium. Is that too late? You,
If y'all feel like you can comfortably decide by the next meeting, then I don't see any harm in leaving that moratorium in. However, if you're unable to proceed forward at that next meeting, I would strongly encourage you to lift that moratorium so that anybody on standby can move forward.
Well, I would be inclined to lift it then, because I just don't want to rush this through.
agreed.
And I feel like, you know, if the criteria is trying to beat the moratorium, then we're going to wind up trying to shortcut this thing, and I don't want to do that. So if that's the motivating criteria there, then I would make a motion to lift the moratorium. Lift the moratorium.
Lift it down, or lift it when it ends, expires.
Now, David is saying that
If y'all don't have, yes, if y'all don't have an objective or something to have in place by April, I don't see any reason to continue that moratorium. That was the whole purpose of the moratorium, was so that you could take that opportunity, take that window to look at what initiative was the roads and other elements of the subject. Some of this came through the planning commission recommendations that they had requested, and seen in applications and problems that they had that existed. So if you're not ready to, if you don't feel like you're going to be ready by April, then I think that you're doing a tremendous disservice to those potential developers with tracts that they're ready to subdivide.
So what if we wait and then we just let the moratorium run, and then as of April, it's freed up? And then we're just a few weeks behind it, we've made our decision. But there's still.
But your stated purpose of your moratorium was to enact changes to the land use ordinance.
Which is what we're still trying to work through.
Okay. Now, one of the things here is that we started out with this roads and moratorium, and then we expanded it based on some input that we got to include the density and everything else. And I understand the reason that behind that, you know, you only want to do this once, if you can avoid it. But maybe we need to split those two apart, consider them separate.
Split what two?
The roads and moratorium versus the lower density portion of it. Right now, the big problem area seems to be the lower density portion.
That's certainly what appeared this morning.
Lot size, lower density,
Yes.
100%. Yes, Karen?
Would it be possible with the, if you do that, if you go with the separating what you're working on, option, would it be possible to have the other things that were not necessarily issues and the changes, have them go ahead and be, ruled on as well? Maybe separated into the issues and non-issues? Because there's a few things in there that we really need to have,
Why don't we,
if at all possible.
why don't we do this? I'll withdraw my motion and we can take between now and the February 10th work session to consider the possibility of splitting these apart, and if so, how? And then at the February 10th work session, we can decide either, okay, we're ready to go forward with the roads portion of it, or we need to lift the moratorium.
I feel better about that also, but I really would love to have a work session with planning commission separate than our work session, our normal, or we'll be there all day, which I'm fine with. But it really would be up to the planning, their time frame. I think we're more flexible than they
I
might be.
can send an email out and see, if they would be available, if you could give me a few options that would work for y'all. And I can ask them which one would work for them, if that would be helpful.
Well, I think so. We're trying to finish, we're trying to see what we could get done or decide on for the moratorium. I mean, not rush, but, you know, we do have, I would just rather have, we've got the conversation going, have some more conversation instead of waiting a month.
And do bear in mind that even though front and center today were the acreage issues, there are other issues that, once you set those to the side, that could very well be as highly contentious, and once those are front and center. So it may take a little bit of time. I just want you to understand that these changes aren't going to happen quickly, possibly. And I think Jim's wishing to address it.
One last little thing that I'll give him the, what if we tried to do the workshop with the planning commission before with it? So that you could figure out the things that are gonna be possibly contentious to need to separate. Would that work? If we could find a date that would work for all of you.
I'm good with that.
If we can find a date that works for everybody else, I don't have a problem with it.
Whatever I can do to help, I'm glad to.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
I just have one suggestion, and it was mentioned here today. We are members of a regional commission, a regional planning commission. It would be my suggestion that we call them and get a report from them as to what the guidelines and regulations are for all of our member counties. Everything north and south and west of us is part of that regional commission. East is not, but they have all of that information that they would gladly provide to us. And I think it would be beneficial to you all, and possibly also to the county attorney and to the director of planning, and it certainly would be beneficial to me. From the road perspective, I do communicate with my neighboring public works directors, and I can tell you that ours is the most lax of anything around us. But that's just a suggestion.
No, I can do that. That's fine.
That would be great because it's very time consuming to go through each county, look up their roof, and then there's something that,
So where are we on this? try to have a meeting with the planning and zoning board. As I understand at this point, there would not be another work session until February 10th. At which time we would make a final determination on whether or not to lift the moratorium. Sure. I don't think we need a motion. Okay, yeah. All right, we'll take about a 15-minute break and then we'll be back. Starting back here.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
We're on. You're not.
Now, Em, you used to have to hold this thing before you go off.
Yeah. Did we upgrade?
Apparently. Oh, I must have just swapped them out, so you had that one. Okay. Yes, Mr. Lloyd, you want to update us on the swimming pool, please?
I guess my first request is don't shoot the messenger. So anyway, we'll continue with that. I did get an email from the engineer on Wednesday, and I notified Charlie that the COVID virus hit our engineering firm on Monday of this week in California, so they quarantined for the next 2 weeks. He's trying to do some work from home, but he can't complete any of his work doing it from home. So I don't have any good information right now, but I will email everyone as soon as I get some more definite information. Hopefully that'll be next week, but anyway, I just don't have any promises.
So in 3 weeks to get us the information, it's turned into 6 weeks already.
Yes, and this is a government project too, so.
Well, was he nearing the end?
Yeah, he's got a lot of information, but he's got a lot of loose ends to tie together. So that's what the problem is, and he can't generate all that from home because I know he's got a computer at home, but because of his drafting abilities and all that, that comes about at the workplace.
So maybe by
And he didn't tell me that. I just know that from experience. Sorry.
We're hopeful that by our.
February 10th.
Yeah. Yeah.
You won't shoot the message.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We might make him pull down.
That's going to be difficult too,
Okay.
Shh.
Discussion and possible action on request for budget amendment for the magistrate judge. I have a couple of suggestions here. The first thing I think is that when Kevin took office, he did find that he was sort of behind the ball on technology. And I understand what it is that he's asking for, and I understand that he needs it. And all things considered, it's not a tremendous amount. What I would like to do, and we've talked about having quarterly budget amendment sessions. Sometimes these things have come up in between. But what I would prefer on this would just be maybe sort of a gentleman's agreement that we'll include this in our next quarterly assessment. I don't want to be having a whole bunch of budget assessments because it looks to the grading folks that we don't know what we're doing. So.
I'm fine to wait. I don't see why we're doing it. That is what it's
It is, unless you're doing them every month or so.
I mean, I've been used historically.
But now you're the CPA, if it won't hurt us, I'll tell you.
No, I know,
I'll go ahead.
I can't speak to the rating, but we used to do budget amendments every month. but I have no problem with that.
Well, I'm fine with that.
Trevor, are we told that by our auditor? Or no? I mean, or you just,
No, that was something that I read. We weren't talking about it.
Or we delay it, if you suggested, and then, define it, doesn't make us get it.
Okay. I mean, I know he's in a hurry to get this, but he's got the money for it now. If we're in agreement to make it official. Here's the thing though, if it really is not going to affect us that way, then, you know, we probably should go and do it as it comes along, just so we can have the clarity and not get behind and so forth. I was proceeding apparently from a false assumption. Or did it? I can ask him. Why don't we go ahead with what we need to do today? And then I'll ask Andrew if we will have guidance going forward. Now, with that said, I'm going to ask that this move to the end of the agenda. Actually, after, y'all gonna love this, a quick executive session. Because there may be things that fit. So you okay with it? Discussion and possible action on approval of easement for Georgia Power. This is an easement that they're apparently looking for through River Park, and it's for underground utilities. Not wild about them digging through there, but as long as everything gets put back, I understand we need to, as robust utilities as we can get. So for myself, I'm okay with this.
I defer to you on that.
Yeah, Dave?
There's just maybe one or two changes that I'll discuss with you, Charlie, but I mean, it's beneficial and I think they own, like y'all got a long-term lease on some of the property.
Most of the property, they own somewhere or another, we got a portion of it, so we go apparently through their park and then in their park. So why don't we do this? I would make a motion that we approve their contract for an underground easement for the utilities. And David, based on David's corrections, if you will give us that with whatever tweaks you want, and I can sign that and send it back to them. If they're not okay with it, then let us know.
I'll second the motion.
Can I ask, this is through the River Park?
Yes.
Okay. Like what section?
Primarily, I didn't think and going through between that.
So where we just fix all of this. But they'll put it back in place, I assume,
Yes.
like it's a proper. Yep.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion and possible action of adoption of a disadvantaged business enterprise plan for Gilmer County Airport update. Mr. Jim.
I'm not going to bore you with a lot of the bureaucratic details, but to briefly explain to you what the disadvantaged business enterprise plan is for the lack of a better term, is a commitment on the part of the county or city or whoever is receiving FAA funds that you will give minority and disadvantaged business enterprises an opportunity to bid on your project. The last time we updated the DBE, that's the acronym, was December of 2018. The threshold that the FAA has is $250,000. Anything above that they require DBE update. This is tied directly, folks, to our 5-year capital improvement plan that we submitted back in December. And if you'll recall, in year 2023, I believe, we project or suggest that we may be asking for a total of $391,000 from the FAA as their participation in actually 4 different items. But in adopting the plan, we have to go through a series of advertisements. We have a public notice that has to be advertised for 30 days. Then we have to send copies of the plan to various agencies that are in tune to minority-owned businesses and things of that nature. What I am requesting of you today is to adopt the update. The update basically shows you, based on our region, that we have a representation of about 5.78% of disadvantaged businesses in our area. I would ask you that we adopt the update and you authorize us to advertise the public notice that will run for 30 days. Any questions?
So basically, this says that we have to allow these businesses to bid. It does not say we have to accept a higher bid, though.
No, it does not.
You have to be clear about that.
Right, and what it does is, we don't have to do it ourselves. What is built into a contract that we would issue with a general contractor, that requirement is put in for him or her. It isn't that the county is doing it, but it says that we will ensure or attempt to ensure that disadvantaged business enterprises are given an opportunity to work on an FAA-funded project. Now, I say that to you for, right now, the FAA is the only federal agency that I'm aware of that has this requirement. There may be others, and this plan that you would adopt, that we have kept in place since 2003. It was adopted, I guess, the first time in 2003, then it was updated in 2007, 2013, 2018. This will be our fifth update. So,
Well, for myself, when we bid something out, I want to get every bid we can get, including minority bids. So,
sure.
I don't have a problem with it at all.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
That's okay, we just put them out in public notice. Does this mean we have to go an extra step and send them to some of these disadvantaged minority?
Yeah,
folks?
Karleen, that is a good question. Let me explain to you what I have to do, or what someone in the county has to do. Once you have taken your action, then I have to send to the Minority Business Development Agency in Atlanta, the Small Business Administration, and any others. But those are 2 agencies that we actually send the notice to and the updated plan, notifying them, basically, Karleen, of the change, if there is a change in the 5.78%. Yeah, good question.
Because we've never limited anyone from bidding.
Oh, no, well, not since 2003 we haven't.
It's just, now we intentionally have to take that extra step to.
We have been, Karleen, we've been doing this for a long time, since 2003. It's your first time to experience this.
So this is just us being required to do what we would do anyway.
That, if you want to receive FAA money.
But I thought you said that the successful bidder has to ensure that they use 5.6.
Right, if you're, Hubert, if your bidder is not a minority-owned business or disadvantaged business, then we build in, and the county attorney can attest to this, we build in a statement into the bid specifications and to the contract that the contractor will do this on behalf of the county.
How do you want this worded?
David, the resolution should basically say the adoption of the disadvantaged business enterprise update for December of 2020, and to authorize us to advertise the public notice.
That's a motion I just made.
And I just seconded it. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Aye.
The only other thing that I will say to you, there's a little bit of comfort in this now. I don't think there's another federal agency today that requires this, but if there is, and your county clerk has a copy of this, if there is, if that should come along, then you have it in place. It can be applicable to the FAA or to anyone else that would require it.
I'd be shocked if the FAA is the only one that requires it.
Same.
Well, but the FAA is the only one that I deal with where we receive those funds directly. Now, we've got a lower Cardiac Bridge out here that we're trying to get built that will have Federal Highway Administration funds in it. But it comes through DOT, Georgia DOT, so they would be the one to build it. We don't get the money directly, is what I'm saying. But anyway, there's comfort to know that you got it in case you need it in other places.
I have to convey some information on that bridge to you when we're meeting this afternoon too.
Oh, okay.
I wish it was. No, it's the same old stuff, you know. I got a letter from them today saying that, you know, this is wonderful and we're gonna do this and we anticipate construction in 2025.
2020.
Well, remember when they told me that before and we called and they said, oh, no, that's wrong. We're gonna have to start calling again. But it's the same old stuff. This is about the third time we've gone through this cycle.
You do a little lobbying.
Well, as a matter of fact, yeah. So, anyway. Okay, so we're going to actually move the budget amendment to right after what I hope is a quick executive session. So there will be action after that executive session. I'm anticipating maybe 15, 20 minutes. So, with that, I'll make a motion that we go into executive session with action anticipated.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, folks. We'll be back as quick as we can here. Okay, I make a motion that we come out of executive session with some action still to be taken.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this point, I would propose that we approve a budget amendment for $5,000 for the magistrate judge to update the software in his office to what he needs to be able to work properly. And also, maybe it was 16. $1,644 per year for the copier that he needs. That either one of those or both of those really could come from either capital or general fund. I would propose that it come from the capital reserve.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's on you now, Hubert.
Make a motion we adjourn fast.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, folks.
Now that you've adjourned, can I ask one more thing?
Absolutely.
Is there any way that the county request like the state control the state highway a little more or anything? Or is that?
We can certainly request it. I mean, you know, they may or may not do it, but we can absolutely. I'm sorry.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm on 52 East, and right there in front of my place where it splits into two lanes,
Yeah.
that's where the drag race begins. So they get RNA orders and then it's pressed back down one lane again. Man, it's.
I'm happy to request that from them.
And there
You
have been
didn't-
more, there have been more accidents, I'm sorry to interrupt you, on that road lately, in the last year.
And I've seen one parked right across the street from my place before we paid for it. I want to thank you for being there and you do it tomorrow. And I saw him maybe one more time in the last 6 months, so I would really appreciate living out there. And it's great.
I never said this, but you can also ask the sheriff to increase patrols out through there.
Well, that's what his office is in a meeting. I hear that's how it goes around what they normally do.
Maybe since it's a state road, but
Yeah.
now I do know that he has authority there. Sheriff's got authority all in the state. But, yeah, there may be a little bit of a hit going on there, so I wouldn't want to get into that.
Well, if you have the opportunity, I greatly appreciate you.
I absolutely will do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day.
Sheriff's Department